Hello, my name is Trisha. Welcome to my channel, Career Clinic with Trisha. It's so good to have you here once again. Thank you so much for dropping by and thank you for all the support. I'm really grateful. So if you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified of my next video. Well,
Thank you very
welcome
much.
to another edition of Career Coaching and Mentoring class, brought to you by Sedat Consult with support from Logo Brand. Please contact Logo Brand on 020-395-4216, 020-395-4216 for all your branding and graphic designing needs. Today we are discussing workplace stress and how we can manage workplace stress for our career success. And we are privileged to be hosting one of the world's best. And if I say one of the world's best, I'm telling you, one of the world's best. Those who know Jeff know that,
I wish.
of course, he's one of the world's best. So Jeffrey Boham is a global learning and development business, project management, and human resources management and development professional. Jeff is currently the president and principal consultant at Impact Solutions LLC, a learning and performance consulting, training and development, human resource advisory, and certification preparation company based in Columbia, MD. Prior to joining Impact, Jeffrey was a senior learning advisor at AARP in Washington, D.C. And also prior to joining AARP, Jeffrey managed the instructional system design team at Aerotech Incorporated, a global staffing and human capital solutions company headquartered in Hanover, MD. Jeffrey has led the design and delivery of several successful learning and development workshops for high-profile clients, including the Baltimore Ravens client services team. Wow. Jeffrey holds 3 master's degrees in business, HR management, and development and instructional design. He also holds HRCI and PMI SPHR and PMP professional certification, as well as SHRM SCP certification. Wow. Please, I want to be like you when I grow up. Prior to moving to the United States, Jeffrey worked as a legislative research officer in the Parliament of Ghana. Hey. Jeffrey's passion outside of his professional life is soccer, and he's a proud Santa Clausian, okay? An active public speaker, a Toastmaster. Wow, he is the immediate past area director for Area 75 in Division G of Toastmasters International's District 36. Wow. And he also loves spending time with his daughter. How is your daughter?
She's in her room right now playing video games.
Oh. Jeff, thank you so much. It's really a privilege. I know we've been wanting to do this for a while, but COVID happened and stalled everything. But it's so a privilege and an honor to have you here this evening. I know we've greeted you on Instagram. We are pulling you right back on Zoom. Thank you for making the time. We are very grateful.
I feel so honored. This is a big opportunity for me. You don't even know. Because you do this with a lot of people. And, you know, to be very honest with you, you reached, I have always known you to be a big heavyweight in HR and GH, right? Wow. And then one day you reached out to me, you said, Charlie, when you come to Ghana, we should do something together. Trust me, I was so looking forward to it. And then dear COVID steps in and changes the environment. You know, I'm so excited. I'm so honored that you've given me this opportunity. Thank you so much, Patricia.
You're welcome, Jeff. You are the privileged ones. Thank you for joining us, Brago, Asanto America. Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Vera. Thank you, Rosalind. You know that many more people join us. So let's start from the basis, Jeff, when we talk about stress, because we are discussing managing workplace stress. So please help us understand what stress is in the first place, and then secondly, what workplace stress is.
Okay. Stress is an interesting topic, you know. Trying to define stress, to me, is like trying to define love, right? Trying to define stress is like trying to define life. Wow. People experience it differently. People see it differently. People feel it differently. I think, you know, you can look at what stress is from several different perspectives. it's very possible to look at stress even from a geographical point of view, where you have like fault lines really not aligning well and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So what I would say about stress, I mean, the definition I would personally give about stress in terms of how I see it to be is more of kind of a misalignment, right? A misalignment or like a deviation from our natural state of being, right? As a result of situations and circumstances that make it possible or make it challenging for us to really be in our natural states, right? An example would be like somebody who has a very, certain approach to dealing with work, but then gets put under tight deadlines, and as a result of that, can't function well because of the situation they find themselves in. So it's really kind of a deviation from our normal state of being based on the fact that maybe we're dealing with, new and different situations, circumstances, or experiences. That's how I'll define stress. And workplace stress, I would look at it more in terms of, challenges and situations that really kind of emanate from the workplace or come from outside the workplace and bring us or gets brought to the workplace, but definitely does challenge our natural state of being in the workplace.
Okay. Should we be concerned? Should we be concerned about stress just before we go on? And if you should be, why should we be concerned about stress?
That's a very good question, Patricia. I look at it this way. If we get concerned about our car not driving well, we want to go see the mechanic because we don't want to get on the road with a car that's not working well. Definitely. What about our own lives, right? We know, I think most of us here already know the challenges and the costs associated with stressful situations, right? The mental challenges we deal with, the physical and medical conditions that may arise as a result of us not necessarily paying attention to things that stress us, right? So I would say that in terms of concern, I think, managing our mental and physical well-being and actually trying to eliminate stress so that we stay in our normal state of being is what I believe should be our number one priority when it comes to managing not just our careers, but managing our lives in general.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It means that we are on course. I mean, it's very important that we understand what causes the stress and even importantly, how to manage it. So please help us. What are the causes or what are the sources of stress, workplace stress?
So workplace stress, there are so many potential causes or sources of stress. I mean, it's just like asking what are the sources of happiness. There are 250 million things that will cause you happiness.
I know, right? Yeah.
But I would put them in three main buckets.
Okay.
I would start off with the personal bucket. Sometimes our personal circumstances may either, create a very aligned situation for us in the workplace, or it may create stressful situations. Sometimes our relationships with certain people, sometimes our financial well-being, so there's always the personal side of the equation. There's also another source that is more situation-based. So you'll be surprised, like I shared with you when we were on IG, there are people who live on this side of town who would fly to Ghana just to spend 2 weeks. And they will tell you that whenever they go to Ghana, their BP goes down.
Wow.
Right? I mean, you go to Ghana and you go to parties, right? And you see somebody with no shoes dancing and being happier than the person here wearing the best Nike shoes. You get what I mean?
I do.
So when to be honest with you, when I go to Ghana myself, sometimes I'm like, this is how life should be, right? I don't need $1 million to be happy.
Definitely.
So the way I look at it is there's the personal side of the equation. There's also the situational side of the equation. So when we look at sources of stress from a situational point of view, examples could be, like being put on a project that you really don't want to be on, right? Maybe being ascribed or assigned a new boss that you really don't enjoy working with. Maybe, you know, dealing with COVID-19, right? It's situational. We know it's going to go, right? But it's a situation we have to cope with for a period of time.
Yeah.
And then we have the environmental side of stress. When we talk about the environmental side, we're talking about the sources, right? That is, to me, one of the most challenging aspects of, or the most challenging sources of stress, because it is in your environment, right? So with the environmental one, we really want to look at it more in terms of how you respond and react to it. With the environmental one, is the one that, to me, is the most difficult to kind of stay away from. For example, there might be a workplace that, you know, you find people who would sign up for certain professions or certain particular companies that they know for sure they don't like, but they want the money, right? So you go to work every day knowing that you don't like this money, you don't like this company, but you have to be in that workplace because they give you the money that you really need, right? So the environmental sources of stress will be like things that really emanate from the environment that we find ourselves in, that constantly put stress on us, constantly challenge us and causes us to deviate from what I like to call our isostatic balance, what our natural state of being, where we feel like this is our sweet spot, that thing that shifts you away from that psychological or mental or physical state that really makes you feel comfortable.
Wow.
By the way, let me also state that stress is not always a bad thing.
Okay, really?
That is a key point. Stress is not always a bad thing. In fact, people who rise very quickly in life, they learn to utilize stress to their advantage. I presented to Toastmasters a while ago, and my research was an interesting one. What I did was I said, hey, that my topic was be comfortable being uncomfortable. Right.
Wow.
There's some people who deliberately take on challenging situations. They stress themselves in bits and pieces, in growth spurts that they can really handle as a way, because growth really happens in our uncomfortable zone, right?
Yeah.
Right. Being uncomfortable, that uncomfortable zone definitely is a zone for stress, right? Yeah. When you get into leadership development programs, right, they call them stretch assignments. The whole idea is to give you a little bit of stress, right, for you to really grow. But it shouldn't be too much that it really shuts your mental and physical well-being down.
Okay.
So you want to look at it more in terms of how you manage to leverage that stress for your growth rather than how you allow the stress to shut you down.
Wow. This is revealing. Most often than not, we associate it with something that is negative. We don't want to have it. We don't want to be stressed out. So from where you are coming from, it makes sense, because then like stretching yourself, but you are also mindful that you don't break down.
Let me tell you a quick story, Patricia.
Yeah.
Do you know how I got to the United States?
No, unless you tell us.
I used to work in Parliament, right?
Yeah.
This was in the year 1998. I used to work in Parliament. Okay. And these were the days where we had to go to internet cafes and pay to browse, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I would go to Parliament. I would work with all these. I worked on different committees, right? And I just graduated from Legon. And I thought I was smart enough. But I would go to some of these committees and I'll see all these parliamentarians who went to school at Harvard and Yale. And I was like, okay, but when we have conversations, they are not supernatural beings. They're normal. They're friends. I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I said, how do I get to be like these guys, right? So guess what I did? I would take my pay from Parliament and I go and sit at internet cafes browsing to get schools into the United States, right? Oh. To come to school here. Mm-hmm. Most of my friends were laughing at me. Mm. They were like, we've never seen anybody as stupid as you. Why would you? Believe me, they reserved Temacom T8. They had an internet cafe there. They had a chair that nobody had to sit in, because they knew Jeffrey would come and spend half of his pay there every evening.
Wow.
You get what I mean?
Yes.
However, I knew what I was looking for. I stretched myself. I went to USIS, and they told me, you don't have the money. How do you expect to go there? And I said, thank you very much, right? You know what I did? I started reaching out to professors, calling people from Ghana, and saying, I want to come and research for you. I got an almost full scholarship. The professor that I was working with found a way to put me on a project that she was working on right, and pay the rest of my thing for me. Why do I say that? I chose to go through that stressful challenge, that situation where everybody told me that I couldn't succeed in. I challenged myself, and it became a positive for me. So the point I'm trying to make here is, let us not view stress always as a bad thing, right? If it's something that we can cope with, that is not going to affect our physical or mental well-being, let's embrace stress, embrace the challenge. Believe me, it can work in some instances.
Is it why some people say, like, I work best under pressure? Would you link that to being positive about stress?
Yes, absolutely, right? Absolutely. Let me Toastmasters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that a lot of people think I'm a very open and sociable person, but I'm actually an introvert?
Oh, really? I don't see you as that.
Yes, there's the outside persona. Okay. There's always the outside persona, right?
Of
if
course.
You get to know me, I'm a very shy person. But I went to, I felt like it was costing me leadership positions in the workplace. And so one of my bosses said, Jeffrey, he said, whenever we sit with you in small groups, you deliver. But whenever you get challenged, right, to get in front of 100 or more people, right, you get stressed out. So I joined Toastmasters for that reason. My very first speech, I was sweating, right? I mean, this is a whole group of people. And then you have to go present.
I know Toastmasters. Hey, it's a big deal.
Guess what? After my very first speech, there was a lady. She was from UK. She followed me outside to my car and she said, sir, you are a good presenter. Don't ever, this is what she said, don't ever, right, judge or question yourself when you're speaking. You have been chosen to get in front of people for a reason. When you speak to those people like you speak to your friend. That changed who I was. Wow. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is I challenge myself. I put myself in that pressure situation, right? And once I got through it, it positioned me to actually gain the confidence to start getting in front of people. Okay. Now I prefer to get in front of people, right? I would volunteer at weddings to give like the speeches and things, not because, I'm good at it or anything, but because I feel like it's become my natural state of being now. I speak in front of people every day. I train, I train for large companies. I train executives. Yeah. But it all started with me being confident and accepting that one challenge. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. Just be confident. Don't run away from stress. But you always have to calculate and go for that stress that you can manage.
Okay, that is very insightful. Thank you so much. Now, talking about the personal sources of stress, the one aspect that deals with personal, like you talk about personal, situational, and environmental. I'm wondering, the personal one, is it self-inflicted? I'm wondering, because the example that you gave, that money could be stressful situation to you or cause you stress, and if you can handle it, then deal with it. But sometimes too, it's a quest to be like somebody else, especially the ladies. I'm saying the ladies because I'm a lady. If you see that a sister is having this kind of shoes or bags or and we can't afford it, we still want to get it. So we want to get what our friends, and causes us stress. I'm thinking that could be related to the personal one. So I'm asking, is this sometimes some stresses self-imposed?
Yes, I fully agree. And since you spoke about the ladies, I have a message for the ladies. Be your own kind of beautiful.
Exactly.
Be your own kind of beautiful, right? And it's not just the ladies. We men go through the same thing. Okay. You get? It's so funny because the men, we also start looking at things like sex pack. You know what? Round is also a shape.
Yeah. Yeah, of
right?
Course. Of course.
Semi. I mean, look at me. in some environments, people prefer the six-pack. Great. In other environments, the full gospel is viewed as being rich. Ooh. Right? So the way I look at it is pick and choose your battles. Okay. Right? Go with what works for you. Right? And to a large extent, yes, it's self-inflicted, But also, I wouldn't say it's self-inflicted all the time, because some people want to muster the courage to challenge themselves to something that they may not necessarily initially feel confident that they can do.
Okay.
My example of me daring to stand in front of a group of Toastmasters and speak was, to me, what shifted me from being shy in front of people to now enjoying getting in front of people, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't tell people to just, stay completely away from, stressful situations. If you can embrace it, right? If you can embrace it, just be calculated. Make sure that it's not something that's going to shut you down.
Okay.
That's how I look at it.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now let's look at the signs. If you are at the workplace or in life generally, and we assess ourselves, what are the red flags? What should we look out for that will tell us that indeed we are being stressed, or we are even above the level that we can take as individuals?
Very good question, Patricia. I think, the way I look at it is, we all have relationships with our own selves. Know thyself. Know what works for you and what challenges you, right? To be very honest with you, even though I enjoy getting in front of people, when it gets to a certain point, I also have my limits, right?
Of course.
I mean, yeah. I'm excited. I get excited talking in front of 100 people. But if you take it to 1,000, now I got to get a bit stressed here. Now this is beyond my limits, right? So the way I look at it, the way I really look at it is that we have to look for the physical and the mental and the emotional signs that really stretch us above and beyond what we can take, right? An example would be just sweating, right? You go to a certain environment and you are like, Charlie, my body's shaking. That should be a sign, right? Okay. You start gaining weight, right? For me, sometimes I get too focused on work that I don't walk as much as I would like to walk. And when I get on the scale, I was like, Charlie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's so many things. There's so many things that would trigger that. Psychological states. Sometimes we feel lightheaded, right? Sometimes we feel like our heart just pounds a little more. So the whole idea is we have to be self-aware. We have to know ourselves. We have to know those things that get us to feel like something just isn't right, right? When we start observing those signs and symptoms, but also, in addition to, so the symptoms are what we feel, right? The signs could be something that we may not see, but other people may see. So we want to also be able to create, an environment where, people are bold enough to do something that I like to call compassionate curiosity. People should be able to, want to create workplaces and workspaces, and we want to hang out with friends who will give us that feedback. People who will be like, Charlie, Jeffrey, you are not yourself today. What's wrong, right? That trigger would get you to start looking within. There are some people who, the way I look at it, they never give people the opportunity to give them feedback, right? Something as simple as smiling in front of people could get somebody to say, Charlie, 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 there's something in your hair. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So we want to create a welcoming environment. We want to create a safe environment where people will point out those signs that we don't see. But in general, if something doesn't feel normal, if something feels a bit different from our natural state of being, we have to, spend some time to look into. The source of it may definitely be stress.
So then, if I understand you correctly, it would depend on the individual and how the individual takes stress and assesses themselves and then decides that, look, I didn't used to eat that much. Now I'm eating, too much and I'm hungry most of the time. Could it be that I'm stressed out? Let me have an understanding of that. All right.
Yes.
And I'm gaining weight, it's not like I'm really doing anything extraordinary, but I'm gaining weight. I'm having persistent headaches, and I can attribute it to stress. So
yes,
what could be a sign or a symptom to somebody may be different to another person.
Absolutely.
You just hit
the nail. Yep.
That is why you make the point that we should understand ourselves. So, man, know thyself and know what stresses you and how you feel. So if you understand yourself and then that something is going wrong, then you can begin to assess what is causing that.
Yep. Fully.
That is very insightful. Then let's understand, because we are talking about managing workplace stress. Let me find out, can it affect our careers, our productivity at work? And if it can, I mean, stress, how does it affect our careers? How does it affect productivity? And does it cause the employer anything at all? Or is just the employee that should really be concerned about stress at the workplace?
Another very good question, Patricia. The way I look at it is, yes, stress in the workplace, really, I would say that it costs a lot. It costs a lot. It costs us our physical, from the individual point of view, it costs us our physical well-being, right? It costs us our productivity. It costs us our morale. And I would say that, to me, if an employee's morale goes down, my first thing is you want to fix that. I think the single most important factor from an HR point of view in hiring anybody, right, is to really evaluate whether that person has the capacity to self-motivate. What do I mean here? You are looking for people who take ownership, right? People who would say, you know what, I know the company is going down, but I'm going to fight to make sure that this works. So those people, the people who can self-motivate, are the people who take salary cuts. They're the people who challenge themselves under all circumstances. So when people start losing their morale, right, you, first and foremost, if it's a personal thing, you want to get ahead of it. You want to fix it. You want to say, why is it that I go to work and actually check out, right? In the same vein, the organization also has to look at it from that point of view, right? So the organization has to ask itself, why is it that we've actually hired people who have quit, but they're still staying here with us, right? We may not be doing something right. So the point being made here is, yes, stress has a huge cost. And unfortunately, stress is so endemic in the workplace. I know, as having consulted with the National Council for Behavioral Health, I know that 1 in 2 people will experience a stressful event in the course of their lifetime, right? Now, for some people, it may be sustained. For some people, it might be like the death of a partner, right? But we all have to deal with stress at certain points in our lives. There are absolutely financial costs associated with it. Healthcare costs, for example, right? Think about it, the individual. You get stressed out, right? You don't manage it. Your blood pressure goes up. You become diabetic. It costs you money to do that. Now you have to spend more time making more money, right? So it becomes a vicious cycle. It just keeps worsening by the day. In the same vein, organizations, right? If organizations don't create employee assistance programs, if organizations don't create wellness programs, right? If organizations don't create a safe and welcoming workplace, right? And instead creates stressful situations and conditions in the workplace, guess what happens? The same organization will have the bulk of its employees spending the bulk of their money on insurance claims. Yeah. Right? So it affects the bottom line. And it's not limited to just the workplace. It's not limited to individuals. It also has to do with nations, right? Why do you think in certain countries they spend so much money creating amusement parks for children to go and play there free? If your children are not happy, guess what? They will come and stress you at home. Now, I hear a lot of parents are complaining. A lot of parents are complaining that they are not happy because their kids are unhappy.
Yeah, I tell you, they are home
COVID is punishing the kids too. Just the way we go to work and take a break from home, they go to school and take a break from our stress. And now we have to live with them at home. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so we just have to learn to adjust and cope, but we don't have to limit it to ourselves. There's so much, cost associated with stress that I think that self-awareness and being conscientious about the cost that it actually has. I know that, I think I learned this from somewhere, that about 10% of nations' GDP goes towards managing stress. So imagine if we manage stress appropriately, right? If we saved the unnecessary costs associated with stress, we could get as a country or as a people, as a company, right? We could get an extra 10% boost in our earnings if we manage to stress appropriately.
Then this means that employers, HR professionals should care about the environment, the work environment, and should put measures in place such that the environment doesn't contribute to the stress of the individual. And like you talk about well-being and all that.
You'll be surprised, Patricia, that I think, and I'm going to say this bluntly, I think in our part of the world, right, because there are not that many jobs, employers, right, they have a field way.
It's true.
In this part of the world, people can walk away from your company and get a new job tomorrow. So creating an environment, right, at the worst case, I mean, people can just leave your workplace and drive Uber and make their own time. So creating an environment where people naturally want to engage with you, creating an environment where people want to come to work is a key employee engagement strategy. And if you as an employer fails to create that condition, right, you'll be surprised the amount of talent you're going to lose. Do you know that a lot of companies now who actually compete for top tier talent, right, like the Googles, the Microsofts, right, they let people go to work with anything they want to wear. Just wear your t-shirt and jeans and come to work. Because if I have to buy shirts and wear ties and everything, I'm going to go to those people who can say, you know what, wake up, take a shower, brush your teeth, wear your t-shirt and come to work. And now a lot of companies are actually giving people 20% of their weekly time to just sit and relax and think about being innovative. Wow. Do you think that if employers had the monopoly over employees, right, they would offer these things?
No.
So over time, believe me, it will happen. Right? Over time, in our part of the world, it will happen. So I think employers who actually get ahead of the curve, the employers who step up and say, we are going to create a welcoming environment. We are going to invest in employee, assistance programs. We are going to, participate in employee wellness programs. We are going to actually get, organizations to come in and check on the health and well-being of our employees from time to time. Will be those employers who win the best employees.
Wow. Are some careers or professions more stressful than others, or is just across board? Because I'm wondering, is it that any job at all could really in itself cause you stress, or what is the situation like?
Another very, 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 very important question. Patricia, that's how I look at it, right? Yes, there are some known professions that are obviously high risk. Being a police officer, think about it. Everybody goes to sleep, but you have to be there stopping people. And, after 1 o'clock, they say bad things happen after 1 a.m., right? But the police officer has to go to work after 1 a.m. and chase the bad people when we all go to sleep, right? The person who flies planes, right? Fire service people. So there are certain professions that are known to be high risk. Okay. But at the same time, there are certain people who are, I would say, naturally embracing of certain professions. So the answer to that question is really, it depends on, first and foremost, who that person is. It depends on the nature of the job, and it depends on how the person feels about being in that environment. One thing that I generally do, I always tell people that before you accept any job, right, you want to look at 3 conditions, right? The first thing is that something that you are naturally passionate about? Number 1. Number 2, is that something that you are naturally very good at, right? If you don't know how to play soccer, don't try to be a world soccer player. You're going to cause yourself stress. Yeah. You get what I mean? Yeah. And number 3, is that something that is really going to give you that fair compensation that you truly, truly, truly feel like reflects what you should be paid? So the point I'm trying to make here is that when you select that profession, right, that you naturally like, that really aligns naturally with your natural state of being, right? Even though it may be a profession that creates stress for other people, it would be something that For you, it becomes your natural sweet spot, right? So when it comes to the question whether certain professions are stressful or not, I would say yes and no. Yes, because, I mean, you don't know math, but you want to be a statistician, right? You're going to create stress for yourself.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? So look for what you are good at. Look for what aligns with your personality and do things that really, work for you. And regardless of how stressful they are, guess what? You will enjoy it and it will create you the least stress.
They say do what you love and you may never work a day in your life.
That is absolutely true. You just put it right. I mean, that quote sums it all.
Yeah. But just briefly on in that part of the world, when parents tend to make decisions, career decisions for their kids, and I want a lawyer in my family. So whether the person loves it or is good at it or is naturally built for it, that's not it. They just want to do, this person should be a lawyer, be a medical officer, be an engineer. Is it not also causing stress to the children? And sometimes they have not said, they grow with it, they build careers around it, and they become so stressed out. Those ones who can, at a later age, walk to their parents and say, look, this is what you wanted me to do. Now I'm doing what I want to do. But most people would just go with the flow and not do anything about it. What would you say to that? If you are somebody in a situation like that, what should a person do?
It's interesting that I was laughing when you talked about that, because I have friends here who have had those conversations, and we get very heated in our arguments about it, right? These are Ghanaian parents who think that they have to pick and choose careers and professions for their kids, right? And they say, well, because our parents did that for us and they made us who we are. Well, that was in Ghana, right? The way I look at it is, first and foremost, the kids in this part of the world, right? They know how to tell you how they're feeling. They know how to tell you what is challenging them and things like that, right? Again, we have to look at it from the realistic point of view. Back in Ghana, most of us, we had no other choice, right? Besides actually depending on our parents fully for everything.
Yeah.
And the parents, they made those investments with the expectation that they would reap their highest profit out of it. So if a father was spending 20,000 Ghana per month on your school, that father might say, you know what, I want you to get into IT. That's where I think the result will come from. And that father may invest in all the money that it takes to make you that best IT person, right? But the way I generally look at it, even let's take this outside of the workplace and outside of everything, right? The way I look at it is, yes, you have to guide your kids as much as you can to help them. You have to give them every feedback they ask for. But telling them what to do with their lives, to me, is a form of bullying, right? Parenting is a relationship. If you have a great relationship with your kids, they can tell you what they love. They can tell you what they would like. Ask them those questions. Work with them, right? To make the best decisions for them. And be there as a guide and support. But don't say, if the child is good at maybe writing and you tell the child to go take math, you are actually punishing that child. And when that child grows up, right, you'll be surprised that the child might shift. You might pay all the money to get that child into IT. But when that child grows and writes a book and makes money, the child's going to tell you, you know what, I'm going towards my passion. Where did your money go? It went to waste.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is, have that conversation, right? I'm into HR, I'm into training, I'm into leadership. I don't ever force my daughter to do anything. I found out she's into computers. What am I going to do, right? Maybe at some point I have to sell my company, right? And give her the money and say, buy more computers. You know, that mindset of you coming over to take over the family business, it works in some cases. But if that person doesn't like it, I mean, work with people. And it's so funny, Patricia. As parents, sometimes we put stress on our kids, but we expect our companies to actually work with us, right? Yeah. We know for sure that if our companies don't work with us, they cause us stress, but we don't bring the same model back home.
Oh, wow. Let's look at, is stress something that we can avoid totally, or we have to live with it?
So it's interesting. When you say, or when you ask if we can avoid stress, to me, I hear like you asking, can we avoid living? Right?
Okay.
There are some things that we have control of,
Yeah.
but there are other things. So yes, we can avoid stress in our personal lives if we identify those triggers, those things that really cause us stress, and kind of avoid them. But the reality on the ground is that, you know, you can't live inside your house for the entire rest of your life. You live in society. Society will bring you stress. When you're driving on the road, right, someone is going to try to cross you,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think stress is something that we can completely avoid, but I think we can do something to minimize the incidence of stress, right?
Okay.
And you see, the way I look at it is, it's not something we can fully avoid, but what we control about stress is our ability to respond and react to it. My general advice is, let's learn to plan and prepare for our responses so that we can respond rather than react. What do I mean here? If all we do is react, stress will control us. The world will control us, right? If I know that X, Y, Z, oh, let's see. I see something from, I think there's a question. I don't know. It's your posture is communicating. I'm stress-free. Just what we need. Oh, look at that.
Hey.
You know what? I used to stress. I would say this is from CK. I used to stress when, like I said, when I was completely introverted and when I wanted to keep up with the Joneses and when I felt I was a perfectionist, right? But I've come to realize that there's so much that you can do. But that also doesn't mean we have to be lazy, right? Sometimes we have to accept a certain measure of being uncomfortable because, like we said earlier, that is how we grow. So definitely stress is not something we can fully avoid. We want to learn to get in front of it, or we want to also learn to, you know, plan our responses and our reactions to it in such a way that it actually can be turned into something positive for us.
Thank you. Then that leads me to my next question. If it's something that we have to learn to cope with it or manage it, how do we do that? How do we manage stress? How do we cope with stress so that it doesn't, you know, shut us out? But like you said, that we can even leverage on it, you know, to move us to our next level.
Okay, that's another very great question. It depends. And it all starts with really understanding ourselves, what works for us, what doesn't work for us, right? So how we cope with it depends on, first and foremost, think about it this way. Let's use an analogy of a car, right? Yeah. When you drive your car and it overheats, right? You try things from time to time, right? If the way you have come to realize is maybe carrying a gallon of water and putting water in the car whenever it overheats, then you learn how to manage it. If the way you manage it is turn off the engine for 5 minutes and then start driving again, that's how you manage it. So how we manage stress depends to a large extent, I would say, on the feedback that we get from our own selves, right? So for example, I told you earlier, I have friends who just fly to Ghana and hang out with people back home, and they will say, also, we do Ghana, but we BP Kofo. So people don't understand why people save money and go to Ghana.
Yeah,
like I said,
so much
if
money
you see,
just for 2 weeks and go back.
You know what? If you see a madman dancing a zonto, right? How are you going to be stressed? Right? The person has no problem, right? But you live in a certain part of the world where people are constantly trying to be uptight and all. No. No. So the way I look at it is just look at how your body responds and reacts to situations. Think about it also this way. Even think about medications, right? The same medication may work well for some people, but may not work for you.
Yeah.
But there are so many coping mechanisms. There are so many ways, like meditation, right? Like just sleeping more. Like, I mean, I have a friend who says, you know, this is so funny. This friend told me, he said, whenever he gets less than 8 hours of sleep, right, he gets moody and he gets stressed. So then sleep at least 8 hours so you don't get moody and transfer your stress to other people. In the same vein, some people can tell you, you know what, anything more than 5 hours stresses me out. So it all depends. The answer to every question in life is it depends. But we have to take some time to look at what really works well with our being, right?
Okay.
But some general recommendations would be like physical activity. Some general activities would be, you know, relaxation. Some general activities would be, like for me, like I said, sometimes I just play music that I like. Go for a walk and play music that I like, right? Sometimes you'll be surprised how therapeutic the app TikTok has been for me. Sometimes I just go on TikTok and watch people and just laugh, right? You will be surprised. It may sound stupid, it may sound crazy, but guess what? It is therapeutic. It works for me, right? I go on TikTok and I look for funny videos, and I just laugh and laugh and laugh. And next thing I realize is I laugh so much that I'm actually crying. I'm like, oh wow, this is so much fun.
Okay.
You and I on Facebook, you saw the old man that I posted on there?
Yeah.
That man, he made my year. I mean, I laugh all the time. Whenever I watch that video, I'm like, man, this man, you know, this is an old man eating his food and trying to dance to that song, Jerusalem. I mean, look at that. You know what I mean? So why would I be sitting home on a Sunday thinking about my statistics projects that I have to work on? Sometimes you just want to take some time, make a weekend, right? Yeah. One of my personal coping mechanisms is that I try to get ahead of the problem. So I plan on a weekly basis, right? On Sunday, I project what my week is going to look like, right? And know the spots within my week where I'm going to be stressed, right? I have a project that I have to turn in tomorrow. Guess what? After this, I'm going to go for a ride with my daughter. When I come back, I'm going to sit and work on half of that project. So by tomorrow, instead of working 8 hours to turn in that project, I only have 4 hours, right? So should I see something on TV? I know I saved myself 30 minutes already today, so I can go and watch it and come back. So it's all about planning, staying ahead of the curve, and generally just, you know, creating conditions that you know will help you better manage and cope with your stress.
This is revealing. Cynthia says we need to take a moment every day to work. A moment every day at work or home to shut down for 5 to 10 minutes to catch our breath. That breaks the chain of stress. Okay, so it's just like you're saying, take a rest, you know.
So now I know CX is my own Cynthia, huh?
Yeah, your one and only.
Hey, boss in here.
Right, and the music thing you talk about is so true. You know, Ghana and traffic. Sometimes when I'm driving through traffic and it's stressing me out, you know, I like playing gospel music in my car. So I'll just play it loud, not too loud, and I'll be singing along. And sometimes I realize that people who are by me are just looking at me, is this lady really serious? You know, but I'll be singing along, and then by the time I realize I'm home and the stress is you know, is minimal. So
you won't believe this, Patricia. When I used to get into Toastmaster competitions, right? There were times where, think about it this way. You know you have a topic you have to go speak about, right? Yeah. You have to go speak on that topic. You know there are going to be hundreds of people watching you, right? How do you actually deal with anxiety? How do you cope with it? Sometimes I go to my bathroom and give the speech. Sometimes I record myself. And sometimes I would be in a store, right, with headsets as if I'm listening to music, but I'll be running my mouth and really practicing my speech. So for me, that's how I cope. Yeah. So whenever I actually get on stage to present, guess what? That is just me repeating what I've been doing 100 times before that, right? So that's how I manage stress. So it's all about just us finding what works for us as a way to really cope with it.
So the bit that you spoke about, self-awareness, becomes very critical. Know yourself, know what you do to cope with your stress. If it's headache, you feel headache, what do you do? Sometimes just sleeping, you know, sometimes just drinking a lot more water. So just understand yourself and know that this is how it goes well for me, or this is what works for me, like you're suggesting. So that so once you understand that, it becomes easier on you.
Absolutely, Patricia, 100%.
Mm, mm, mm. So then it also depends on the source or what triggers the stress. So, for example, if you see one particular person and your heart just pumps faster and you are stressed out, why don't avoid that person if you can?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you want to choose your response, right?
Okay.
Because there are certain people who, even if you try to avoid them, they look for you. So sometimes their response would be going head on with the person and saying, hey, the way you ask these questions or the way you challenge me stresses me out. Can we talk about it? Can you meet me halfway? Can we discuss how we can work together as a team? Sometimes it's better to actually, face it head on and fix it than try to avoid it all the time. You know what I mean? So you really have to look at the options that work for you. You have to participate in your own rescue.
I like that. But what if that person is your boss? And in our part of the world, like you said, there are not too many options. And you walk up to your boss and say, boss, look, the way you talk to me or the way you relate with me stresses me out. And so let's have a conversation. Not many of us would, be that courageous to walk up to our boss, knowing that our jobs may depend on that. How would you advise that if we have to have that conversation with our bosses, we do that? How do we go about it?
Let me give you a real life example, right? I worked in an environment where I felt like my boss was always demanding so much of me, right? And it was very difficult because this lady was one of the nicest ladies to everybody. But particularly with Jeffrey, she just kept pushing because she felt like, you know what, or African, whatever I say, he's going to do it. He will even take the work home. So you know what I started doing? I became best friends with her boss, right?
Okay.
And her boss's kids played soccer. So guess what I did? I started coaching her boss's kids, right, in soccer, right? So when she realized that I was spending a lot of time doing, lunches with her boss, I mean, wherever your source of energy comes from is where my friendship is, right? Wow. So I respect you, we work well, but if you hurt me too much, I might tell him and it will hurt you. Right. So you really have to be strategic about some of these things.
Okay.
Right. I reached out to this lady and I said, you know what, I really enjoy working with you, but sometimes you just push me too hard. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know all that. Sometimes they don't know.
Yeah.
And we Africans, sometimes it's hard for us to say no. Oh, because you think that the more work they bring to you, the more they are demonstrating that you are being effective. So, let the children of God speak. Sometimes you have to just be courageous. Just go and have that conversation, right? If it works, fine. But before you go have that conversation also, prepare yourself. I mean, if it leads to a no, go somewhere else. Imagine the you baby.
That's it. That's it. You have no option then. Like you're saying, just be strategic about it. Plan it. And everybody, I tell people that everybody should know their bosses. Study your boss. Know when it's good to have such conversations with them and go to them and have the conversation. Because really, from all that we have shared here, Jeff has shared with us, it has health implications.
Yes. So
if your life depends on it, if your career success depends on it, then you need to really take the bold step.
Yeah, Tricia, that's a very important point you make, right? But let me also share something, because I mean, did it have to get to the point of your friend actually having no other option than to resign?
Yeah.
Because I think in life, one of the best things we can do for ourselves is to constantly create options for ourselves. What do I mean here? I may be a finance person, right? Yeah. But I may have reserve capabilities, right? Or even within the finance world. Let me give an example right here. I live in America, right? But I have a lot of friends in Ghana, and I check in with them constantly. So I've already created an environment in Ghana where if something should happen here, if Mr. Trump says go home, people will accept me and say, Jeffrey, I need Papa. You get the point? Yeah, so in life, the way we network with people, the way we support people, I look at relationships like bank accounts. Make deposits before you think about withdrawals. Right? You see, this is what I do. Some of the things I do is I try to create environments where I soften the soil, right, for people to actually be ready to accept me, right? And your net worth is your net worth. What do I mean here? Make sure that you check in with the people. So this friend of yours, to believe me, let's say if this person, let's say Patricia has this big company, say that, right? And you're working with, you being successful in your company, and your friend is getting stressed. Your friend reaches out to you and says, Charlie, this is too much for me. What do? You say, you know what, come here, I'll work with you.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make is, as a way of constantly managing potential stress, not stress that has actually actualized.
Yeah, okay.
As a way to manage potential stress, what we want to do is build a network that will be there for us.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised that you will be there are so many arms ready to take you in.
Whoa, 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 whoa. This is very revealing. So when you have explored all the options, then you take such drastic decisions. But the part that I love, Jeff, is the fact that he said we need to participate in our own rescue.
Yeah.
So you have a part to play in that, and you'll only be able to play that part very well if you know what is stressing you out, and when you are stressed out, what you go through. Then you'll be able to, okay, if I'm stressed out, I get headache. And if I get a headache, I take a lot of water, I rest, and I'm okay. Or I dance, like you dance in the bathhouse. and I'm okay. So that it's not as if people can suggest general things to you, do this, do that, like Jeff is saying. But really, you need to understand what your situation is and what works best for you. And that you adopt those measures and cope. And remember that he says that stress is not only negative. Stress, you can actually leverage on your stress to take you to the next level. Those of us who do a lot of public speaking, you do it so many times, but anytime you are doing it, there's some level of anxiety. But how do you deal with it? So you challenge yourself, like Jeff is saying. Now Jeff stands before 100 people. He's going to stand before 1,000 people, and the preparation may be different. And I like the part you talk about preparing and planning. Because sometimes, especially at the workplace, it becomes so stressed that because we don't really plan. We do a lot of firefighting. And planning will save us a lot of stress.
It's interesting. Let me chip in something here, Patricia. What you said, I fully agree with. You see, and sometimes we have to be deliberate and intentional, even in our selection of activities, whether we know, because there's certain potentially stressful situations, right, that come like wolf in sheep clothing. They come as opportunities, but the reality is that in the long run, they have negative consequences. Let me give an example. I just recently, I chose to walk away from corporate America, right, and set up my own small business. I was talking to Emmeline, I knew the challenge that came up.
Yeah.
Right. The challenge that was going to come was I was going to lose a lot of money. Right. But I made that choice. And guess what? It's so funny because I started, I would say, around early 2020. I said, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to go fully and I'm going to deal with all the financial. I was prepared for it. Right. Then along comes this major organization. Oh, Jeffrey, you're so good. You're so this. And then they made me this huge offer. Right.
I know
so the offer that they made me, I look at the offer, but the offer came with conditionalities. You know the condition that it came with? It came with me stopping my global training. Wow. Right? And this global training is what puts me in front of executives. Yeah. My last recent training was with the largest oil company in the world. Wow. Right? The way I look at it is, yes, the training may pay me less, but it's positioning me to get in front of all these powerful executives. I have to make a choice, right? I have to make a trade-off, right? I looked at the long-term benefit. And then they said, because you can't be traveling when you're working with us, and I'm talking about, this is a massive organization, right? And basically, they were saying, you have to end those things and you have to dedicate your 8 hours. And I said, well, you know what? You can give me all the money, but you're still making me an employee. And when I told one of my best friends here, I said, I'm not going to take it. He was like, have you really thought about it? I said, look, they gave me a whole weekend and I thought about it the whole weekend. And I said, I'm not going to take it, right? Do you know that just about 2 weeks ago, I landed a contract and I spoke with my friend. Guess the contract the amount of the contract that I landed, right? In 3 months, if this contract really goes well, in 3 months, I'm going to end up probably making that amount that we're going to give me in a year.
Wow.
So the whole idea here is sometimes we have to intentionally lose the battle, lose the war. Which one is it? Lose the battle in order to win the war.
In order to win the war.
Sometimes we have to lose the battle in order to win the war. Sometimes we have to lose the short-term gain in order to make the big long-term win. And that should really be part of our decision-making. So when some of these things happen, we don't have to say, you know what, this is the only option that I have. It's not the only option that you have.
There are other options.
Right? I talk to friends who do a lot of pro bono work. And people will say, well, you know, you never get paid for some of these things that you do. But the reality on the ground is that pro bono is what puts them in front of social media. And they get bigger projects because of that. So we really have to be willing to, like I said, you know, lose some battles in order to win the war.
Like what you're doing right now. If we were to pay you, we can't. But you see, thank you.
No.
Brago Asantua Mreku says, I entirely agree with the speaker. I had to move from sales to HR, even though I was a star in sales, to reduce the stress. I went through each day to bring my very best out. And that is a classical example of what you're saying, Jeff. And Edna Okole says, the issue of health is very critical, especially when it affects your BP and you always have to visit the hospital.
100% to both folks, because think about it. I mean, the cost of managing diabetes is about half of your pay. So you go get that 1% raise, that's going to give you 200 more, you know, activities to work on per week. And you come to find out that in the long term, you're actually losing, you know, and a lot of people chase titles, VP of this, VP of that, you know. So we really, I think in the long run, the control is still in our hands. That mindset that we are locked with a particular client, or that mindset that we're locked with a particular employee should not be the overriding decision-making factor in everything that we do.
There are options. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, it's just stressing, lose some battles to win others. And sometimes we think money, Edna is speaking, sometimes we think money is more important than our rest. Lose a day and not a year or a lifetime. Well, thank you so much, Edna. These are profound. Savera says, but we need to be bold and intentional. And I think it's in that way what you're saying, be bold and be intentional.
Yes. I mean, you know, don't be scared to speak up for yourself. I learned that the hard way. And don't get me wrong, you know, I'm saying that because I live in this part of the world, but I think that it's a transformation that those of us in Africa should try to embrace very quickly. I quite remember when I came to this country in the year 2000, my very first HR class. Midway through the class, this white girl gets up and walks away and says, I'm not going to waste my time on this class. And I was shaking. I was like, I don't know what the professor is going to do. Whoa. Right? It was such a shock to me, right? But people are conditioned to say, I don't like it. I'm going to change my class. And she spoke up. She said, I'm sorry, but this is not what I want. Right? In Ghana, even if we don't like the course, we want to sit in the class because we don't want to be perceived as being too known or something of that sort. But the reality on the ground is, you know what? Just do what works for you and what works for your own mental sanity and what works for your health.
Wow. Thank you.
I see some questions coming in.
Yeah, Cynthia says, in this era of remote working, if your family is becoming your major stress button, what can one do?
Cynthia, that's a very good question. I think that, you know, it's easier to have the tough conversation with your family than to have with your worker, right? That's number one. And then also, you want to be able to compartmentalize life in the family. What do I mean here? If you have a big house, have an office. Have a home office where when you go in there, nothing really works. Now, one thing also I want to mention, Cynthia, is that just the way, remember that the reason why the family is becoming the stress for us is because we're not used to working with a family or living with a family under the same roof, right? Just the way we think that our siblings and our sisters and our fathers and our daughters and our kids are becoming stressed, we're also becoming stress points for them, right? Like my daughter, she was always in school with her friends, and now she has to deal with me running my mouth on this computer every day, teaching people and getting on programs. So there's something called compassionate curiosity. What do I mean by compassionate curiosity? Reaching out to people to say, am I making you happy, right? Am I causing you stress? What can I do about it, right? Let me share something personal. And she's walking here, but I'll still say it. I always take my daughter on vacations, right? And I realized that she's dealing with the stress of being home all the time too. You know what I did? I still put the money for her vacation now, and I went to her and I said, we didn't get to go on a vacation because of COVID, right? What do you want to use your vacation money for? And she has a certain specific type of gaming computer that she wants. We said, let's go buy it, right? So the stress that I put or I created for her it wasn't me, but I mean, COVID, we have to stay home all the time. Sometimes we just get in the car and drive around. So the point I'm trying to make is family can be stressed to us, but we can also be stressed to them. So we have to find ways. And it's 10 times easier to work with family than to work with people we don't know.
Right. And Rosalind says, I think it's been great. It's a bit challenging when you really need to meet timelines, thereby not getting a work-life balance. Right. Edna is asking, can consistently staying up late, not sleeping early, lead to stress?
Okay, so let me start with the first one. Let's see. That's from Rosalind, right? And it says, I think it's been great. It's a bit challenging when you really need to meet timelines, thereby not getting a work-life balance. Let me touch on that. So we talk about meeting timelines, right? Right. You remember I talked about responding versus reacting?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I know, for example, if I know that I have a deadline to meet by Tuesday, then I can start working on Sunday. So I create a space for myself. So sometimes we have to plan ahead in order to not deal with stressful timelines, number one, right? And then the thing we call work-life balance, I also like to call it work-life choices, right? Okay. What do I mean? We call it balance because it favors us, right? What about choices? Sometimes we have to make certain choices that don't favor us, but in the long run works for everybody. What do I mean here? We say work-life balance, right? Okay, it doesn't have to balance all the time. If you need more life than work, right, take a pay cut like me. I took a pay cut for 5 months, and I'm telling you, I call my name.
Wow.
Cynthia knows about it. But it was a choice, right? Okay. So let's not expect to do less work and still get paid the same. The point here is that let's make choices that fall and align with our long-term strategy. Because in the long run, I knew that I was going to lose money for about 5-6 months, but after that, I was going to make money again. So it was a choice that I made, and I don't want to call that balance.
Okay.
Okay. So, right. And then Rosalind, there's another one that says, Edna says, can consistently staying up late lead to stress? Well, yes and no. It depends on how your body reacts to it, right? I was getting on WhatsApp and these platforms and texting friends, and I would realize in the evening that I spent my whole day just texting and chatting and playing. So what I did was I switched to the point where I work from night till morning, but I make sure I sleep 8 hours minimum during the day, right? If my body responds and reacts appropriately to me sleeping during the day and not really dealing with any medical conditions, then I'd rather go that route because that works for me. But again, it all starts with knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Right? If sleeping during the day doesn't work for you, well, go with the normal state and find ways to adjust to things that really work for your body. And then I think Rosalind says, what do you do when you can go on leave because you are already home? What do you do when you can't go on leave because you're already home. Let me tell you something. It's so funny because go on YouTube. My daughter and I do it, right? You have people who actually travel the world shooting videos of places we all want to go, and it's on YouTube. If you go on Netflix. So you can have a virtual vacation with your popcorn and with your drinks and sit at home and get the same feel, right? Type anything you're looking for, right? Maybe Google Alaska. You can't go to Alaska, but you can see Alaska, and it gives you the Alaska feel. Your questions are still answered. So wherever there's a will, there's a way. You can dance around some of these things. And you need to understand that you could have made the trip if it wasn't for COVID. If planes are not flying, the best you can do is actually watch it. And then let's see, can you please touch on whether lunch breaks are important or not? Ooh, that's from Edna.
Yeah.
Can you please touch on whether lunch breaks are important or not? That is interesting. I would say that, you know, the organization has to have a cutting point and a startup point. So organizations would definitely say between 12 and 1, take that lunch break, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just like sleep. People tell you 8 hours is what you need. But if your body, Michael Essien, right? He was asked a while ago, they said, why are you so energetic? He said, I sleep for a minimum of 12 hours a day. Right? And I'm like, this guy is a beast. Well, you know, if you can run that fast and be that strong, I'm not surprised that he was sleeping 12 hours a day. Right? So the point here is that lunch breaks are great, but I think you want to take mini breaks at the time when your body is asking for food. Now, I know also that even during this COVID, right, because a lot of us ended up at home and sat for long periods of time, what some of us did, for me, I took short walks instead of taking a full lunch break. So the general point here is that let's go with what works for us. Let's be the masters of our destiny. Let's be the leaders of our brand. Let's do what works for us, and let's make sure that in doing all that, we're still creating that balance that we need to stay sane. That is also very critical. If not, then we actually do create stress for ourselves. See, folks are really enjoying the questions.
Yeah, you see.
I see more questions coming in.
Yeah. Rosalind says interesting, but it's not the same. The value is not the same. Virtual and the real deal. The value is not the same, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think Brago also says, is it critical for every organization to have a cubicle for rest hours, or when one is stressed out and want to relax? Jeff.
Ooh, that's a very, very, very deep question.
Yeah.
Brago. And this is how I look at it. I think that organizations have to have relationships with their employees, right? So what do I mean here? Instead of creating the cubicles and expecting the employees to go sit there and feel relaxed, you want to have like a survey, speak to the employees, organize focus groups, ask the employees, what can we do to make you relax? Right? Some employees will tell you, I don't need cubicles. I just need an extra paycheck. Right? So why spend the money setting up a cubicle when you can add 10 more Ghana cedis to my pay? Some organizations will say, give us free, maybe Fridays off. Right? So if you want your employees to fully align with you, if you want your employees to really work with you in a very health-filled and wellness approach, what I would recommend is ask them what makes them feel sane and whole, and actually give them what they're asking for.
Okay. Edna says, thanks, Jeff. You mean Jeff? Thanks, Trisha.
Yeah, I know.
I'm very glad I joined in. Thank you, Edna. We are glad you could join us as well. Jeff.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Trisha. You know, it's interesting. I love doing these things.
I know.
Because I feel like we're all Ghanaians, right? We're all Ghanaians, and thank everyone for joining us also. These are conversations we need to have, and thank you for the opportunity to actually bring this to our HR fraternity. I'm excited that I see my own brother on here, you know. Yeah. He's a very quiet person. He's always working, so I'm very pleased that he joined us. In wrapping up, what I'm going to say is that, and I'm saying this really from my own experience, because we've read the books, right? But we also have to look at what really works.
Exactly.
I think that we should know ourselves. We should really, really, really take time to identify what works for us, right? And we need to understand that our well-being, right, our happiness, our rightful state of mind, our physical, I would say, well-being is more important than all the money we're going to make. How would you feel? Think about Michael Jackson. I'm sorry to use his name here. How can a 50-year-old go training with 22-year-olds and they keep begging and say, can we take a break, please? And Michael says, I don't mess with my fans. We have to keep training. Now Michael is gone. Who's enjoying Michael's estate? People who he probably never even thought about.
Yeah.
So the most important aspect of our work, the most important aspect of our life should be our own well-being, right? I just recently joined a financial planning group, and I learned one most important thing, which is always make sure that you are financially secure and protected before you think about investments, right? Your health is your wealth. Your sanity is critical. The point we have to make here is that let us not forget, I would say, mental well-being and physical well-being, because these are the two things that we need to even make money, right? And the source of our mental well-being and our physical well-being is us having full sanity and not being stressed. We have to be fully aligned with our true nature, and let us take the opportunity to pay attention to ourselves. A quick story from one of my bosses in my previous, not a long story, my previous work. One day he walked by me and he said, Mr. Boham, I have some feedback to give you. And I said, go ahead, Mike. You know what he says? He says, why is it that you're always sitting in the office after 8 o'clock? I mean, I'm the last person to leave and I don't want to see my employee in the office after 8 o'clock. And I said, but Mike, I like to prepare for the next day. He said, let me tell you something. He said, you can be training your head as much as possible, but remember your head sits on your body. If your body is not well, your head will never function well. And I took notice of that. What do I mean here? Let's not spend too much time sitting and studying and working all the time. Go for a walk, go hang out with your friends, go dance. You know what? Be sane, be physically and mentally sane, because that is the only way you can actually live long enough to enjoy the hard work that you put into your own life. Thank you very much.
Wow, your head sits on your body. Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. This has been very revealing and very insightful. Thank you, everyone. Brago says, thanks immensely, Jeff and Patricia. Thank you to Brago. Remember that Career Coaching and Mentor class was brought to you by Sedat Consult with support from Logo Brand. Please contact Logo Brand on 020-395-4216, 020-395-4216 for all your branding and graphic designing needs. Thank you so much, Jeff, for making the time to impact our lives. We are very, very grateful. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have learned a thing or two that will help you to move to the next level in your career. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you have already subscribed, please like this video and share it with your family and friends. Until I see you again, keep preparing for your dream job and your career advancement. Bye.